Zhen Goudao Flow+Changsheng Flow+Killing and slaying Resolutely+Mortal Flow, crossing the realm of cultivating immortals. I thought I was about to fight and kill those fierce cultivators, competing for the chance to become an immortal. Unexpectedly, it comes with an endless panel of Shouyuan. What should I do if I suddenly become immortal? In order to become immortals, all living beings beat and killed each other. That's because their lives are short. If they don't fight, they will die. But I'm different. If I go to argue, I will really die. As long as I can persevere and cultivate slowly, I will eventually become an immortal. This is the story of an immortal who strives for immortality in the realm of cultivation. Keywords of the novel. I am in the realm of cultivation, and there are no pop-ups. I am in the realm of cultivation, and I am in the realm of cultivation. Download the complete TXT collection. I am in the realm of cultivation, and I am reading the latest chapters of the realm of cultivation. Chapter 1. Endless Longevity, Immortal Life. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 1. Endless Longevity, Immortal Life. Early morning. Zhushan Xianfang. Twinkle rays of sunlight fell from the sky, illuminating the entire Zhushan Immortal Archway slightly. As the sun rose, the entire Zhushan Immortal Temple gradually came to life. Human figures intertwine. Not so broad on the street. The sound of selling came from all directions. Lower grade thick earth talisman, essential for home protection. 5 spiritual stones per piece. Lingmi. Homegrown Lingmi, 1 lingshire weighs 10 pounds. Lower grade monster meat, 2 pounds of a spirit stone. The spring breeze carries a hint of coldness, and the pedestrians on the street come and go hurriedly. Only the vendors eagerly looked at the crowd, hoping for business to come. He tightened his sleeves and scanned the crowd around him. After pausing for a moment at the Lingmi stall, he reluctantly moved his gaze away and looked at the fanmi placed beside him. Lingmi is delicious and can also increase cultivation. But now I am shy in my pocket and still prioritize filling my stomach. Senior, help me weigh 20 kilograms of plain rice, Hisong said as he approached the rice stall. Okay, 2 spirit sands. Lingsha is a smaller trading currency than lingshire, and 1 lingshire is enough to exchange for 100 lingsha. As for ordinary silver or gold, they are worthless in the cultivation world. In the cultivation world, as long as something carries spiritual power, the smallest monetary unit is spiritual sand. The person selling rice is an old man who looks very old, but the spiritual pressure on his body makes Hisong secretly feel palpitations. Seeing that Hisong only bought 20 kilograms of rice, he didn't say much, just put the rice in a package and handed it to Hisong. Hisong took out 2 spirit sand pieces that had been prepared long ago from his sleeve, paid with one hand and delivered with the other. Carrying 20 kilograms of rice, Hisong felt a stone fall to the ground in his heart. Don't even look at other stalls. Turn around and walk towards the exit of the stall area. The first time I went out, it went smoothly. Carrying rice in his hand, Hisong walked along with a deep sigh of relief in his heart. Although I already knew from my predecessor's memory that killing was prohibited in the Zhushan Immortal Temple, I did know that when I first arrived in a strange world, it also made Hisong feel uneasy in his heart. Hisong is a traveler. 3 days ago, I traveled to this world and occupied the body of a cultivator who practiced qi. Fortunately, the predecessor of this body was also called Hisong. After obtaining the memory of the predecessor, Hisong stayed at home for 3 full days before perfectly reproducing the life habits and various small habits of the predecessor. This is the cultivation world. The act of taking possession often occurs. As it concerns his own life and fortune, Hisong naturally cannot step out of the house without making some preparations. If someone discovers that they have taken possession of it, they may immediately be treated as evil cultivators and killed with a disorderly sword. Now, after 3 days of imitation and reinforcement of memory, it was confirmed that he would no longer be detected as abnormal. Only then did Hisong leave the door and, for the first time, gaze at the familiar and unfamiliar cultivation world in front of him with his own eyes. The place where Hisong lives is not far from the stall area. After walking for a while with rice in hand, Hisong finally returned to his home without noticing anyone following him. Close the door. Lock. Backrest against the door. Hisong slowly exhaled a breath. It's better to have a rule of law society, at least you don't have to worry about losing your life inexplicably. However, if I hadn't traveled through time, I should have already figured out how to surrender now in order to get the best protection, right? Being immortal is not easy to hide in modern society. Putting the rice bag in his hand aside, a black background with white letters suddenly appeared in front of Hisong, a panel that only he could see. Name. Hisong. Lifetime. Infinite. The traveler wears a golden finger. This kind of thing is nothing but normal. Hisong has read many novels, so naturally he will not feel unfamiliar with things like golden fingers. However, the panel with black background and white text in front of him did not bring Hisong the kind of golden fingers that could instantly move the air. On the contrary, in the eyes of Hisong, its functionality still appears somewhat inadequate. Endless longevity. Immortal life. It sounds very beautiful. Many human emperors and prominent nobles pursued immortality in their later years. However, being at the bottom of the cultivation world, obtaining such abilities through cultivating one layer of qi seems somewhat inadequate. What are the people who have pursued longevity from ancient times to the present? A human emperor. Noble nobility. A wealthy merchant. 1,000-year-old family. These people all have some commonalities. Having a high status, able to experience the beauty of the world and wield the power of the world. Keep living, and their beautiful life will continue to be enjoyed. Has any ordinary person living at the bottom of society ever wanted to pursue longevity? Old beggars seeking longevity and continuing to beg for food for 10,000 years. A brothel woman seeking eternal life, and a brothel receiving guests for 10,000 years. Farmers in the fields seek longevity and cultivate for 10,000 years. The company strives for longevity and strives to move bricks for 10,000 years. Is the tendency towards masochism so severe? After immortality and endless longevity, one still needs to live. Injury can lead to death, poisoning can lead to death, hunger and illness can also lead to death. Plus, it costs money to eat, to see a doctor, to rent a house, and everything. In such a situation, the elderly living at the bottom of society may not be as beautiful as imagined. Of course. If they are already nobles and nobles, it is a different story. Those who seek immortality are almost all nobles and nobles. In this way, this golden finger does seem somewhat insignificant to Hisong. However, Hisong was not discouraged either. There is one more thing in this world that can change one's destiny compared to the world in one's previous life. Cultivate immortality. Cultivating immortality is not inferior to others. As long as you have time to continuously absorb spiritual energy and return it to yourself, your cultivation will gradually increase. When cultivation begins to increase, your status, class, and strength will gradually improve. At this moment, Hisong's cultivation is at the level of qi refining, and his status is at the bottom of the cultivation world. But if his cultivation breaks through to the foundation construction period, Hisong's identity and status will undergo a tremendous change in an instant. Furthermore, Hisong's identity and status will naturally change. This is the thing that can truly change one's life against the heavens. As long as you live long, your status can continue to improve, and no one will question it, nor will anyone dare to suppress it. Strength is the foundation of all identity and status. The most important thing now is to earn spiritual stones. Shaking his head to let go of his thoughts, Hisong let out a soft sigh and then grabbed the rice bag beside him and stood up. Pour the rice from the rice bag into the bottomed rice jar. He Song looked at the familiar room in front of him, which was his future home. Home is rented. 10 spirit stones per month are not cheap. For He Song now, it is very expensive. Xianfang never cared whether the scattered cultivators could afford to rent a house. Such expensive rent is also a test for Xianfang to screen qualified cultivators. If you can't even afford the rent, then leave the immortal temple and become a casual cultivator. Although the external spiritual energy has become thinner. Although the outside world is a bit dangerous. Although the external mortality rate is higher. But at least, there is no need for so much rent. After groping on his body and inside the house for a while, He Song finally fell into contemplation as he looked at the more than 30 spiritual stones placed on the table in front of him. If only rent is paid. This spirit stone can be handed over for 3 months. But if combined with food and drink, and the cost of studying a craft, He Song felt that he might not be immediately kicked out. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Spirit Rain Technique. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Spirit Rain Technique. What can more than 30 spirit stones be used for? You can buy 6 thick earth talismans. Lingmi can buy 300 kilograms. You can buy 60 pounds of inferior monster meat. And then, it's gone. If I really buy these things, I'm afraid I won't even be able to eat them right away. To prevent myself from being kicked out and to prevent myself from starving to death. Learning a craft that can be used to make money as soon as possible has become the top priority for He Song now. Following the memories of his predecessor, He Song flipped through boxes and cabinets again. When he returned to the only table in the room, a few more things appeared in front of him. 2 wrinkled thick earth symbols. A book titled Planting Techniques for Spiritual Plants. A technique called Thick Soil Technique that can cultivate up to 9 levels of Qi cultivation. Plus, there are already over 30 spirit stones on the table. These things. It has become all that He Song has now. In my past life, I finally came out of the countryside and settled down in a big city. After crossing over, will I have to start farming again? Looking at the spiritual planting techniques in front of him, He Song's expression of doubt about life flashed away. He is not unfamiliar with farming. In his past life, he was a rural child, and under his influence, he is also quite familiar with the techniques of farming. But who would have thought that after crossing over to become a cultivator, he would still need to pick up his previous farming skills? In the realm of cultivation, those who plant spiritual rice or other spiritual plants to make a living are collectively referred to as spiritual planters. Lingjifu's income is not high, but it is relatively stable. Just take good care of the spiritual plants and you will have a good income every year. In the eyes of lower-level cultivators, this is a good path. The spiritual planting techniques that I dug out of my own room was the result of my predecessor's intention to develop in the direction of the spiritual plant master. Meditate for a moment. He Song picked up the spiritual planting techniques on the table and began flipping through it. In the book, Cultivation Techniques for Spiritual Plants, only 2 cultivation methods for spiritual plants and the cultivation methods for 2 spells are recorded. The cultivation method of Ling rice. The method of planting golden bamboo. Lingyu art. Spirit arrow technique. Ling rice can be harvested after maturity, and it is the staple food for cultivators. Jinju, on the other hand, is a specialty of Zheshangfang city. It is as hard as iron and can be used for refining, but it has a long maturity period. Lingyu art is a spell that irrigates spiritual plants with spiritual power. Spiritual arrow technique is a spell that kills pests in the spiritual garden. In addition, Lingji planting techniques also indicates that once you have learned Lingyu and Lingjian techniques and have thoroughly read this book, you can apply to Zhushanfang City to become a Lingjifu. Zhushanfang City will distribute 5 acres of Lingtian and corresponding Lingji seeds for free. However, once you become a spiritual planter in Zheshangfang City, the planted spiritual plants will be purchased by the market at a price of 30%. The market price for Lingmi, which costs 10 pieces of Lingshi and 100 caddies, will change to 3 pieces of Lingshi and 100 caddies in Zheshangfang City. Even if the yield of Lingdao per mu is as high as 1,000 pounds, the Lingji man can bring himself at most 150 spiritual stones from 5 acres of Lingtian after a year of hard work. If one lives in the neighborhood, the annual rent for 150 spiritual stones can cover the vast majority. After working hard for a year, after deducting the rent, there was only a balance of 30 spirit stones left. This is really a money-making flower from the local market. I want to take it home separately. However, even so, if one wants to stay in the local market, the profession of Lingzhufu is still highly sought after. Not for others. One reason is that there are cultivators stationed in the neighborhood, making it very safe. The second reason is that the concentration of spiritual energy in the neighborhood is much stronger than outside, and the cultivation speed is faster. Forget it, let's survive first. If you earn less, you'll earn less. Anyway, my lifespan is unlimited, and during the qi refining period, as long as I absorb spiritual energy, I can become stronger. Since the safety of the market is guaranteed and the cultivation speed is faster than outside, I'll stay here for now. After carefully reading the book, Planting Techniques for Spiritual Plants, Hisong made a decision. Sinking down, Hisong quickly immersed himself in the knowledge brought by books. The method of cultivating Ling rice. The method of planting golden bamboo. Lingyu art. Spiritual arrow technique. At a glance, strands of insights appeared in Hisong's mind like a spring. Due to his previous experience in growing rice, Hisong quickly understood the cultivation method of Lingdao. Lingdao, in the end, is just rice that contains spiritual energy. Compared to ordinary rice, it actually has commonalities. However, spiritual rice requires nourishment from spiritual fields and irrigation from spiritual rain techniques. After fully understanding the cultivation method of spiritual rice, Hisong quickly began to practice the techniques of spiritual rain and spiritual arrow. The cultivation methods of Lingdao and Jinju only need to be understood. The key to becoming a spiritual planter is the spiritual rain technique and spiritual arrow technique. Without these two spells, even if you study the cultivation method proficiently, you won't be able to grow qualified spiritual rice and golden bamboo. The time required for practicing spells is relatively long. Although Hisong immersed himself, due to his low cultivation, he still needed to eat. Therefore, when the sky turned dark, Hisong was finally awakened by hunger. Looking out the window, Hisong felt a slight surprise in his heart. Unconsciously. I have been immersed in magic for a whole day. If it weren't for hunger awakening oneself, I'm afraid I could continue to immerse myself. Is this the magic of the cultivation world? By mobilizing the spiritual power in the body and practicing spells, various magical effects can be produced. The key to casting the spirit rain technique flashed through his mind, and Hisong sighed in his mouth. However, his body instinctively mobilized its spiritual power and began to pinch the spell to cast. This was originally his subconscious action. Just like a child who has just received a new toy, they always have to get started and play with it themselves. Learning a spell takes only half a day, and ordinary cultivators may not even have entered the door. No matter how simple the spirit rain technique may be, a cultivator who cultivates a layer of qi still needs 10 days and a half months of practice to perfectly unleash it. However, in the next moment, buzz! Hisong only felt a tingling sensation on his scalp. When he looked up, Hisong was startled. At this moment, above Hisong's head, a tiny cloud-like mist was quietly floating. As Hisong's gaze scanned, strands of water vapor began to permeate the tiny clouds above his head. Bark! When the first drop of spiritual rain fell from among the clouds on Hisong's face, Hisong woke up again. This is Lingyu art. Although the clouds above are very small, the spiritual power contained within them is absolutely true. However, due to Hisong's first use, he was not proficient at all, and the clouds condensed by the spell were extremely small. But, Lingyu art is Lingyu art. Once it is cast, it indicates that you have entered the door. Next, you only need to practice slowly, and soon you will be able to cast the normal spiritual rain spell that covers several acres of spiritual fields. The clouds formed by the spiritual rain technique above the head quickly dissipate. But at this moment, Hisong's heart was quite hot. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. 1 month. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 3. 1 month 1 day. It's just a short day. I have successfully used one of the 2 spells recorded in Spiritual Planting Techniques. The Spirit Rain Technique. Although the Spirit Rain Technique is only an introductory spell for the Spirit Planter, the difficulty of cultivation is very low. But for ordinary spiritual cultivators to practice this spell, it takes 10.5 days to fully unleash it. And myself. It only took 1 day to unleash. Although the spiritual rain technique he used was only a palm-sized cloud, this progress still surprised and delighted Hisong. When my predecessor practiced spells, he didn't have his current progress. Is it because of time travel that one's soul is stronger than their predecessor, so the progress of practicing spells has also increased? A hint of speculation flashed through my mind. Hisong's gaze towards the book Spiritual Planting Techniques in his hand also underwent a slight change at this moment. If that's really the case, so my future path of cultivating immortality may be much smoother than I imagined. Let's eat first. I've been practicing these 2 spells hard these past few days. After mastering them thoroughly, I'll apply to become a spiritual cultivator in Zhushanfang City. After becoming a spiritual cultivator, one can truly settle down. Putting down the book in his hand, Hisong turned around and went to cook. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, 20 days quietly pass. Early morning. The golden sunlight shone through the window and landed on Hisong. When his body became warm, Hisong also opened his eyes at the right time. Spirit Arrow Technique. A spiritual light flashed in Hisong's eyes, as he pinched the magic between his fingers and activated his spiritual power. A chopstick-sized spiritual light quickly appeared between Hisong's fingers. Lingguang swallows and spits, like a sword's light. This is a spiritual arrow condensed from the spiritual power inside Hisong's body. As he moved with his heart, Hisong's mind only moved, and the spiritual arrow between his fingers shot out. Like secular arrows, the spiritual light shot straight out from between Hisong's fingers, almost in the blink of an eye, directly penetrating the floor of the room and leaving a small, bottomless pit in the soil beneath the floor. Pwai! A faint sound came out, and Hisong looked at the small pit in front of him, which was deep and bottomless, and muttered to himself. This power. I'm afraid it's comparable to a handgun, right? If you hit someone on the body, it's probably a hole in one hole at a time. Moreover, after becoming proficient in spiritual archery, the consumption of spiritual power in the body is not significant. This spell is truly used for deworming in the field and can be repeatedly used in a short period of time. Although the power of Spirit Arrow is relatively small compared to other spells, it is sufficient if it is only used to dispel insects and does not require combat techniques. Having witnessed the power of spiritual archery, Hisong stood up satisfied. At this moment, 20 days have passed since Hisong closed his door to practice the Spirit Rain Technique and Spirit Arrow Technique. During these 20 days, Hisong thought that his speed of practicing spells was much faster than his predecessor. But after 20 days of comparison, Hisong finally had to confirm a fact. The speed of practicing spells on my own is indeed much faster than my predecessor. But it didn't get too fast either. Lingyu art and Lingjian art, any type of spell, require an average cultivator to practice for about half a month if they want to use it normally without losing power. The predecessor was probably also in this category. However, now I only need 20 days to practice these two spells to the point where they can be used normally without losing their power. As he went, Hisong found that his spell talent had indeed improved, but this improvement was also within the normal range. Perhaps it's because I am a traveler and have absorbed memories from my predecessor, so my soul is stronger than my predecessor's. Hisong thought to himself in his heart. Having a strong soul is indeed beneficial for practicing spells. Even traditional cultivation techniques, with a strong soul, naturally lead to a faster pace of cultivation than others. For example, alchemy, making talismans, practicing weapons, forming formations, and so on. These are all people with strong souls and stronger perceptual abilities who have an advantage. But at this moment, Hisong has not yet the ability to cultivate these skills, so he can only guess in his heart and it is difficult to put them into practice. I have had breakfast. Hisong took all his possessions and opened the door for the second time. Why does the morning sunshine bring a hint of warmth to my loose body? The houses built side by side like matchboxes in front of him made Hisong's mood slightly heavy. However, soon the heaviness in Hisong's heart dissipated. Clench your fist tightly. Sensing the spirit arrow technique and spirit rain technique that could be released at any time, a smile appeared on Hisong's face. Going out today is not for anything else. Just to apply for the position of Lingjifu in Zheshangfang City. Once I become the spiritual cultivator of Zheshangfang City, I become my own person. The change in identity will greatly enhance Hisong's security in Zheshangfang City. At least, without deliberately offending others, there are basically no people who specifically come to make things difficult for themselves. Turning back and closing the door, Hisong followed his predecessor's memory and quickly chose a direction to walk towards the place where he had applied to become a spiritual cultivator in his memory. Lingyao Pavilion. When Hisong followed his memory and came here, there was only one old man on duty in the pavilion. At this moment, the old man on duty was holding a book and reading it with great interest. When he saw someone coming, he put down the book. Meng Lao, the younger generation has already learned the techniques of Lingyu and Lingjian, and has thoroughly read Lingji planting techniques. Today, I am applying to become a Lingji master. Salute respectfully to the old man in front of you. Hisong claimed to be a junior. Meng Lao's name is Meng Guan, and he has cultivated 6 levels of qi. He was one of the managers of the Lingyao Pavilion under the governance of the Zhushan Immortal Archway. Usually responsible for recruiting spirit planters and distributing spirit rice and golden bamboo seeds. According to the memory of his predecessor, the spiritual plant planting technique on his predecessor was obtained from his hands. This path of spiritual cultivation was also bestowed by Meng Guan. Otherwise, relying on the cultivation of one's predecessor to cultivate qi, there may not be much hope in obtaining the book Spirit Plant Planting Techniques. It's you, not bad. You've only been here for a month now. It seems that practicing spells is not lazy, and it's not in vain of my efforts. Taking a serious look at Hisong, who was respectfully bowing, Meng Guan nodded slightly and praised him. But soon the conversation changed and he spoke up. Come and show me your Lingyu and Lingjian techniques with all your might. If you pass, you will become a Lingjifu under the jurisdiction of the Lingyao Pavilion in the future. To become a spiritual cultivator, one naturally needs to take the Lingyu and Lingjian exams. Only when these two spells enter the door and can be used normally without compromising their power, can one become a spiritual cultivator. The Lingyao Pavilion under the jurisdiction of Zhushan Xianfang is not a good hall. To enter it, there must be a threshold. Yes, senior. He arched his hand towards Meng Guan again, and a spiritual light flashed in Hisong's eyes as he pinched the formula with his fingers. Soon, a spiritual rain cloud that could cover several acres of spiritual fields condensed out. As the patter of spiritual rain falls, strands of spiritual energy are also attracted, merging into the spiritual rain, immersing into the surface, and finally diffusing into the soil. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Lingzhufu, you are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 4 Lingzhufu Lingyu technique is to attract spiritual energy from the air to blend into rainwater. Fall to the surface and let spiritual plants absorb it. With the application of Hisong's spiritual rain technique, Meng Guan standing beside him nodded slightly. Hisong performed this Lingyu technique beautifully, and at first glance, he knew he had done hard work. Lingyu technique, pass the level. Alright, stop it and don't disturb the others. Use the spirit arrow technique again. Meng Guan's slightly aged voice came to his ears, and Hisong stopped casting the spell. Although Lingyu technique is useful, it also depends on where it is used. On this side of the Lingyao Pavilion, it is within the Zhushan Immortal Archway, and killing is prohibited within the Zhushan Immortal Archway. Releasing spells is possible, but if the fluctuations in mana are too drastic and attract members of the law enforcement team, they may be directly treated as evil cultivators. However, due to the fact that the Spirit Medicine Pavilion often has people participating in the application for the Spirit Plant Master, the spiritual fluctuations caused by Lingyu and Lingjian are also very gentle, so there is no need to worry about attracting people from the law enforcement team. Received the guidance of Meng Guan again. The decision in Hisong's hand suddenly changed. Spirit arrow technique. With a silent thought in his heart, accompanied by the movement of spiritual power in his body, a spiritual arrow condensed from spiritual power quickly appeared between Hisong's fingers. The cold light swallowed and spewed like a sword's light, and the power of spiritual archery had been fully unleashed by Hisong. Just wait for he to let go of his thoughts and release them. Okay. You're actually a hardworking kid. In the past month, you haven't been delayed at all. You've learned 2 spells very well. On the side, Meng saw that Hisong had cultivated both spells to a level where their power was not compromised and they could be used normally. As he looked at Hisong's gaze, his satisfaction suddenly grew stronger. A month ago, out of his responsibility to search for a spiritual planter, he casually found a newly entered cultivation realm to practice qi and gave him the book Spiritual Planting Techniques. Originally, this move was just unintentional interference. There is no expectation of receiving any feedback. He has been doing such things for many years now. But who knew that a month later, the unintentional act of inserting willows that arose in the first day of junior high school brought me a considerable surprise. Hisong's diligence surprised him, but at the same time, he also developed a slight liking for him. A small thing he did unintentionally, but Hisong in front of him did not show any neglect. This attitude has benefited him greatly. With the help of senior colleagues, I will do my best. Faced with Meng Guan's praise, Hisong was speechless and could only respond with one sentence. What else can he say? Can it be said that I only spent 20 days learning 2 spells, and the remaining 10 days, I only passed 3 days? As for the remaining 7 days, I haven't crossed over yet. This kind of thing is not worth mentioning. But at this moment, Meng Guan's interest was quite high. Even though Hisong said so, his mood was still very good. Not bad, not arrogant or impatient, with the potential to be a spiritual planter. Meng Guanshuan followed his carefully groomed beard and looked at Hisong with a more friendly gaze. Come on, since you are so diligent and have such a pure heart, then you will be the spiritual planter of my Lingyao Pavilion from now on. Meng Guan stood up and walked towards the backyard. Hisong quickly caught up. In the backyard, Meng Guan first prepared 2 special clothes for Hisong, specifically designed for spiritual cultivators. Then I filled him with a small bag of lingmi seeds. After finishing these, Meng Guan left the backyard with Hisong and specifically pointed out 5 acres of spiritual land to Hisong. And it is said that Hisong will be responsible for the 5 acres of Lingtian in the future. If there is a breakthrough in cultivation in the future, one can continue to apply for more spiritual fields with him. After becoming a spiritual cultivator under the jurisdiction of the Spirit Medicine Pavilion, every time my cultivation breakthrough occurs, I am able to apply for more spiritual fields for cultivation. With higher cultivation, the spiritual power in the body increases, and the number of spiritual fields that can be taken care of naturally also increases. This can allow the spiritual planter to earn more spiritual stones. This is also the reason why so many people flock to Lingzhufu. The income of a spiritual planter is not fixed. The more spiritual fields they take care of, the higher the level of spiritual plants they plant, and the higher their income. Once done well, it can also be considered a smooth path to the realm of foundation construction. But it will take time to endure. The number of spirit stones that can be obtained each year is still too small. Hisong is already immortal, so naturally there is no need to worry about time. Lingjifu's path is also quite suitable for him. After a moment. After bidding farewell to Mengguan, Hisong quickly arrived at the location of the 5-acre spiritual field he was responsible for, following the map provided by Mengguan. This place is not far from Zhushanfang City, and can be said to be closely adjacent to Zhushanfang City. Lingtian naturally requires spiritual nourishment. Only with the concentration of spiritual energy around the neighborhood can spiritual fields be nurtured. On the periphery, if the concentration of spiritual energy is insufficient, it is impossible to form a spiritual field at all. It can be said that as long as there is a spiritual field, the concentration of spiritual energy will not be low. Of course, the distance from Fengshe is not too far. This place is not far from where I live, and there is a road connected to it, so there shouldn't be any safety issues. Hisong looked at the figures coming and going on the road behind him, and his heart settled down. The surrounding spiritual fields seem to have already planted spiritual rice seeds, and now it's spring, and it's time to start farming. Looking around again, Hisong frowned and seemed to understand something. I think the reason why Senior Mengguan gave the book Cultivation Techniques for Spiritual Plants a month ago should have taken this into consideration. This is the right time for spring plowing. Thoughts flashed through his mind, and Hisong suddenly realized that his predecessor's luck seemed very good. Just as I entered the Zhushan Immortal archway from the mortal world with Qi, I met Mengguan, who was searching for the spirit planter before spring plowing. It was only then that I gradually embarked on the path of the spirit planter. If my predecessor had not met Mengguan, I'm afraid that after crossing over, I would have to stare blankly. But soon Hisong set aside his thoughts in his heart. The most important thing now is farming. With a gentle wave of his hand, Goudao spiritual power scattered all the spiritual rice seeds in his hand, scattered throughout the 5-acre spiritual field. Plant the seeds of Ling rice. Use the spirit rain technique again to cover all the 5 acres of spiritual fields under your management. Let the spiritual rain fall and water the spiritual field. The strands of spiritual energy quickly merged into the spiritual rain under the convergence of the spiritual rain technique, falling into the spiritual field to nourish the spiritual rice seeds. Inspired by spiritual energy, the spiritual rice seeds in the spiritual field have undergone wonderful changes at this moment. Half an hour later, Hisong sweated profusely and stopped using the spirit rain technique. As an auxiliary spell, Lingyu spell actually consumes very little spiritual power, but unfortunately, Hisong's cultivation level is also low, only having 1 layer of Qi cultivation. In such a situation, maintaining the spirit rain technique for half an hour also exposed the spiritual power in Hisong's body. However, even so, Hisong did not show any signs of discouragement on his face. Lingzhufu is like this. The growth of spiritual rice requires the spiritual planter to perform half an hour of spiritual rain technique every day, as well as taking care of the spiritual field to prevent pests from invading. Only after a year can spiritual rice be grown. Such tedious planting has led to the high price of Lingmi. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. A strong and powerful man. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. A strong and powerful man in a normal market. A piece of spirit stone weighs 10 pounds of spirit rice. 1 acre of Lingtian produces 1,000 kilograms per year, and 1,000 kilograms of Lingmi requires 100 Lingshi. 5 acres of Lingtian produce an annual output of 5,000 kilograms, and 5,000 kilograms of Lingmi require 500 pieces of Lingshi to purchase. At such an expensive price, if you want to eat spiritual rice every day, only those family cultivators and disciples can do it. A spiritual planter like Hisong. I can't even afford to eat the spiritual rice I grow myself. Of course, I can't afford it because Hisong has become a spiritual planter under the jurisdiction of the Spirit Medicine Pavilion, and the Immortal Workshop needs to draw 70% instead of opening up a spiritual field for cultivation. Open up a spiritual field and plant spiritual rice on your own. There are so many things needed that Hisong cannot afford them now. Firstly, a spiritual land with abundant spiritual energy is needed. Secondly, it also requires the ability to resist evil cultivation. In addition, the danger of the spirit field being outside the immortal archway has greatly increased. If one's cultivation is not enough and they want to work alone, they may die very tragically. It is precisely because of this that Hisong chose to become the Lingjifu under the jurisdiction of the Lingyao Pavilion. Although after becoming a Lingjifu under the jurisdiction of the Lingyao Pavilion, the Immortal Workshop will receive a high commission. But the safety is self-evident. And it can also ensure that Hisong will not be bullied without reason in the Zhushan Immortal Temple. Now, all he needs to do is change into the clothes of the spiritual medicine Lord Lingjifu, and he will be his own person from Zhushan Immortal Workshop, with a backing behind him. Plant the seeds of Ling rice. Hisong thought for a moment and then changed into Lingzhufu's clothes. After scanning the spiritual field and realizing that there was nothing wrong for the time being, Hisong's figure immediately came to the main road and headed towards the interior of the Immortal Workshop. Become a spiritual cultivator under the jurisdiction of the Spirit Medicine Pavilion. Hisong's identity changed. From humble casual cultivation that used to cultivate one layer of qi. Becoming the spiritual planter of the Lingyao Pavilion under the rule of Zhushan Immortal Fang. Although it may seem like just a change in identity, the results are immediate. On the way home from Lingtian, people with familiar faces began to greet each other in a familiar manner. Hisong also followed the style of his predecessor and responded one by one. When Hisong returned to his doorstep and was about to open the door. The door of the neighbor's house opened at this moment, and a young cultivator with a strong physique and malevolent eyes opened the door and walked out. At first, this person did not care about Hisong's existence. But just as he instinctively glanced at Hisong and noticed that the clothes on Hisong's body seemed somewhat familiar, he lifted his eyes and looked at Hisong. I'm Lin Kong. I haven't seen Dao Yu before, but Dao Yu just moved in recently. Looking at Hisong's attire, which belonged exclusively to the internal personnel of the Immortal Workshop, Lin Song's eyes were filled with a hint of surprise. I didn't expect to see this outfit here. Clothing that belongs exclusively to the internal personnel of Xianfang is not something that everyone can wear. In Zhushan Xianfang, it's best to avoid people wearing this kind of clothing as far as possible. Not for others. Just because once something happens, the people of the Immortal sect will definitely lean towards the opposite side. By then, even if it's okay, it's likely to become a life-threatening matter. Therefore, even though Hisong's cultivation level is only one layer of qi cultivation, Lin Song did not have any intention of belittling him when he saw this. It turns out to be Lin Daoyu. I'm Hisong. I've been living here for almost a month, but I've been living in seclusion and haven't gone out much, which makes Daoyu laugh. Seeing the other person greeting him, Hisong naturally wouldn't slack off. After slightly bowing his hand, he smiled and replied. Lin Song had a strong physique, with evil energy in his eyes and twisted muscles all over his body. Coupled with the overwhelming spiritual pressure, Hisong felt a wave of evil energy rushing towards his face, making him suffocate. What a strong and imposing man! Hisong exclaimed in shock. Judging from Hidao's attire, it seems that he is on duty inside the Immortal sect. Seeing Hisong stop to respond to him, Lingzhufu's face also softened and he asked. I just entered the Spirit Medicine Pavilion today, and I am the Spirit Planter under the jurisdiction of the Spirit Medicine Lord. Hisong nodded at him. The Lingjifu under the jurisdiction of the Lingyao Pavilion can indeed be called an internal member of the Immortal sect, and the cultivators of the Immortal sect will not be embarrassed to see them. However, compared to personnel like the Xianfang law enforcement team who hold the power of scattered cultivation and killing, their identity is slightly lower. Oh! Congratulations, Taoist friend. It's a sign of good luck. Upon hearing this, Lingzhufu said congratulations and his gaze towards Hisong immediately showed a hint of envy. Although Zhushan Xianfang is not large. But there are also foundation-building monks stationed. The foundation-building cultivator in Zhushan Xianfang was sent from Qingyuan Xiancheng. As for Qingyuan Immortal City, it belongs to the Jindan sect and the Huda sect. At this moment, the foundation-building cultivator sitting in Zhushan Xianfang is also a disciple of the Huda sect. So layer after layer, Hisong entered the Lingyao Pavilion under the governance of Zhushan Immortal Temple, which can be considered to be backed by the Golden Elixir sect. Although it doesn't actually have much effect. But speaking out this name can also intimidate a large group of people. Non-staff members of the Jindan faction. Is it something that any casual cultivator can afford to provoke? Dao Yu praised me falsely. It's just a stroke of luck that I can become a spiritual cultivator. I can't compare to Dao Yu. Hisong saw the envy in Lingzhufu's eyes, and immediately had a conclusion about his actions of practicing the Spirit Rain technique and Spirit Arrow technique, and joining the Spirit Medicine Pavilion to become the Spirit Planter. My own approach is at least much better than simply becoming a casual cultivator. At first glance, Lingzhufu in front of him was not someone to be trifled with. Despite hearing about his identity, he still had a look of envy in his eyes. If it's an ordinary casual cultivator, I'm afraid there's no way to become a spiritual cultivator, right? The fortune of its predecessor seems really good. Hey, you're joking. As a casual cultivator, I can only collaborate with other cultivators to hunt monsters and sell their corpses to obtain spirit stones. Compared to being around the immortal archway, my profession is extremely dangerous. Shaking his head, the envy in Lingzhufu's eyes gradually faded. Halfway through the conversation, he seemed to have thought of something. After glancing at the sky, he continued speaking. I have something important to attend to when I leave. Next time I visit, I'll say goodbye first. With a slight bow towards Hisong, Lingzhufu didn't wait for Hisong's reaction before rushing out like a leopard. Watching Lingzhufu's figure rapidly disappear. Hisong, who had originally wanted to be humble with him, was also surprised in his heart at this moment. This Lin Kong. He is indeed a character who licks blood with a sharp edge. I think partnering with people to hunt monsters should earn a lot of spirit stones. However, most of the earned spirit stones should have been used to improve oneself. Otherwise, Lingzhufu's fierce aura could not be so strong, and his strength would be much stronger than that of an ordinary cultivator at first glance. However, even though Lingzhufu earned a lot, Hisong was not at all tempted. Lingzhufu is right in saying something. The danger of doing their job is really too great. It's okay to encounter high-level monsters, just run faster than your teammates. I'm afraid that someone in the team may have ulterior motives or be targeted by higher cultivation cultivators to kill and steal treasures. It was really then. Even if you earn a lot of spirit stones, they will all become gains for others. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Lingjian Pavilion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Lingjian Pavilion. In the eyes of Hisong, who has already lived forever. Nothing is more important than safety. Lingzhufu's road is not suitable for Hisong. Rather than struggling in the outside world, it's better to practice slowly and steadily in the Immortal workshop. The concentration of spiritual energy in the Immortal square cannot be compared to the outside world. Practicing in the Immortal workshop is much faster than outside. This is also why the scattered cultivators all want to enter the Immortal community, and the rent in the Immortal community is so expensive. Spiritual energy. But it has never been free. Shake your head. Set aside the idea of going on an adventure. Hisong pushed open the door and entered the room. First, I cooked myself a meal, and then I started meditating and practicing qi. Just now, after using the spirit rain technique for half an hour, there is very little spiritual power left in Hisong's body. Fortunately, there is a strong spiritual energy in the Immortal workshop, and the speed of restoring spiritual power is also extremely fast. But Hisong still spent 2/4 of an hour to fully restore the spiritual power in his body. The next step is to cultivate. In the early stage of qi cultivation, one only needs to gradually absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, in order to increase their own spiritual power. Once a certain boundary is reached, one can break through to the next level. For example, from the first level of qi cultivation to the second level of qi cultivation, one only needs to practice step by step, and there is no bottleneck when breaking through. Only from the initial breakthrough of qi training to the middle stage of qi training. Or it is only when there is a breakthrough from the middle stage of qi cultivation to the later stage of qi cultivation that bottlenecks appear. Many cultivators will get stuck in the early stages of qi cultivation and make no progress for decades. There are also many cultivators who struggle in the middle stage of qi cultivation, but cannot break through to the later stage of qi cultivation. For example, Meng Guan from the Spirit Medicine Pavilion has been stuck in the 6th level of qi cultivation for several years and has been unable to break through to the 7th level of qi cultivation. Therefore, he was transferred to the Spirit Medicine Pavilion as a small manager. And the existence of this bottleneck. This is a reflection of the qualifications of the cultivators. In this world, having a spiritual root is the only way to bring qi into the body and become a cultivator. And spiritual roots also have levels. The 5 spiritual roots of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. Having all 5 systems, it is a pseudo-spiritual root and belongs to the category with the worst qualifications. The lack of one element in the 5 elements is known as the 4 spirit roots, which have much better qualifications than the false spirit roots. The lack of 2 elements in the 5 elements is known as the 3 spiritual roots, which have a relatively fast cultivation speed and are the backbone of major families and sections. The lack of 3 elements in the 5 elements is the earth spirit root, and the cultivation speed is faster than the 3 spirit roots. It is a good seedling that all major families and sects will not miss. The lack of 4 elements in the 5 elements is the heavenly spirit root. As there is only one type of spiritual root, the speed of practicing this type of spiritual root is extremely fast. Any sect or family will spare no effort to seize the immortal seedlings. In addition, there are also some mutated spiritual roots that are beyond the reach of ordinary people. Generally speaking, cultivate the spiritual roots of the same lineage as you own. For example, Hisong possesses gold, wood, fire, and earth, as well as 4 spiritual roots, with a talent of 4 spiritual roots. So, there will be no difficulty for Hisong to cultivate the earth-style technique of thick earth determination. However, if someone gave Hisong a water-based cultivation technique, even if Hisong had 4 spiritual roots, he could not cultivate them. There is no other reason, Hisong lacks the spiritual roots of the water system. And there are still differences between spiritual roots and spiritual roots. Spiritual affinity is an extremely important point. The higher the affinity of spiritual power, the faster the speed of cultivation. For example, Hisong has the 4 spiritual roots of gold, wood, fire, and earth, but after testing, his spiritual affinity is the highest among the earth. Therefore, when practicing earth-style martial arts, Hisong's cultivation speed is the fastest. Once practicing the 3 series of techniques of gold, wood, and fire, Hisong's cultivation speed will decrease accordingly. In this way, The ability to select the most suitable cultivation method has become an important factor for cultivators to overcome bottlenecks. If you cannot find the most suitable cultivation method for yourself and there are no other channels to obtain it, the bottleneck will come, and you may have to obey fate and be tormented by the bottleneck, making you want to become immortal. Think of it here. Hisong couldn't help but sigh again. My predecessor's luck seems really good. The soil-type spiritual root has the highest affinity for one's own spiritual power, and being within the influence of the thick soil sect, one can easily spend a spirit stone to purchase the thick soil technique that can directly cultivate up to the 9th level of Qi cultivation. Now, as someone who cultivates the thick soil technique, there is no need to worry about the cultivation method for the time being. Following the path of thick soil determination, Hisong quickly fell into cultivation. The strands of spiritual energy were absorbed by Hisong, and then transformed into his own spiritual power. The spiritual power in Hisong's body also began to gradually grow. In the blink of an eye, days and nights quietly passed by. It wasn't until he was starving that Hisong opened his eyes again. 1 cultivation. It's just a day and a night. Feeling the slight increase in cultivation in his body, Hisong secretly calculated in his heart. At my current cultivation speed, it may take 2 years to elevate my cultivation to the 2nd level of Qi cultivation. Breakthrough from the 1st level of Qi cultivation to the 2nd level of Qi cultivation in 2 years. This kind of cultivation speed is not slow. On the contrary, it already belongs to a relatively fast cultivation speed. Hisong's earthy spiritual roots have a relatively high affinity for spiritual power, and their cultivation speed is even faster than the general 4 spiritual roots. Although not as fast as the cultivation speed of the 3 spirit roots, it can still be considered one of the best among the 4 spirit roots. In addition, it was because Hisong was in a place with abundant spiritual energy such as Zhushan Xianfang that he had such a cultivation speed. If in a place with thin spiritual energy, Hisong's cultivation time may be even longer. Not bad, you can break through to the 2nd level of Qi cultivation in 2 years, and this cultivation speed is much faster than ordinary for spirit roots. After finishing his work and getting up, Hisong was quite satisfied with his progress in cultivation. He nodded and then began cooking. At this moment, he is only a small cultivator who has just honed his Qi, and cannot be like those great cultivators who do not need to eat or drink. As for the Pai Gudan, that thing requires 2 spirit stones for a bottle of 10, and one can last for 10 days without hunger. For Hisong, it's still too luxurious for the time being. The fanmi I bought earlier is more suitable for a young cultivator like Hisong. Although it's a bit troublesome, who made Hisong only have over 30 spiritual stones on him now. Have eaten. Hisong once again came to the spiritual field he was responsible for. After practicing the Lingyu technique for half an hour, Hisong carefully observed the growth of the Lingdao seeds and found nothing strange before returning to the Immortal Archway. Today. It's when the rent is paid every month. At the beginning of each month, all cultivators who rent in the Immortal Temple need to go to the Lingjian Pavilion under the jurisdiction of the Immortal Temple to pay their monthly rent. The monthly rent of 10 spirit stones cannot be reduced at all. If it cannot be handed over, Sanxiu will be immediately kicked out of the house and reduced to living outside the ethereal immortal workshop. Unless, this Taoist friend, you look unfamiliar, but are you new to the Xianfang? End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Wei Fan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Wei Fan. When Hisong, dressed in the attire of Lingzhufu, just walked into Lingjian Pavilion, a voice had already come from beside Hisong. Next up. In front of Hisong appeared a young man who was also wearing the internal clothing of the Immortal Palace. The man had a smile in his eyes, and his gaze towards Hisong also had a hint of gentleness, as if he had seen his own family, making him feel like basking in spring breeze. However, Hisong was able to sense a strong spiritual pressure from the other person. I think my cultivation level may be much higher than myself. Seeing this, He-song quickly arched his hand. Indeed, I, He-song, only became a spiritual cultivator yesterday. I have met a senior. He-song did not conceal anything, but instead spoke truthfully. I have just become a spiritual cultivator, and there is nothing that can attract people to covet. Judging from the appearance of this person in front of me, it doesn't seem like they are looking for trouble. He-song naturally won't hide anything. I, Wei Fan, am the steward of this Lingjian pavilion. As a Taoist friend, I am not only a Lingjifu, but also a member of the Xianfang family. There is no need to be so polite. Wei Fan's eyes flashed with a hint of clarity. As the deacon of Lingjian Pavilion, he personally receives almost every member of the Xianfang internal staff who comes to renew the lease of Lingjian Pavilion. Lingjifu has also been in contact with many people, and now it is the spring plowing period. The Lingyao Pavilion has recruited Lingjifu again, which is not surprising to him. He Dao Yu, please come with me. The Immortal sect has its own rules and there is no need to associate with these scattered cultivators here. As Wei Fan spoke, his gaze swept over a group of scattered cultivators who had already formed a long queue on the other side, and his disdainful gaze flashed away. Loose repair. There is a huge gap between the internal personnel of Xianfang and others. In order to cultivate resources, casual cultivation can do everything to the extreme, so the mortality rate remains high all year round. However, the internal personnel of Xianfang, due to their unique skills, do not have to risk their lives, resulting in a very low mortality rate. Faced with a casual cultivator who could die at any moment. Facing an internal member of the Immortal sect who has a unique skill and will gradually increase in cultivation. His attitude will naturally be completely different. Even though the spiritual cultivator may not receive much resources every year, he will not easily die. When time passes, there may be a character in the middle or even later stages of qi cultivation. As for casual training, maybe you just got to know him, and in a few days, that person will have already died. That's just making friends, it's a pure waste of time. Following Wei Fan's gaze, a scene of a group of scattered cultivators queuing up to exchange spirit stones suddenly appeared in front of He-song. Unlike spiritual cultivators like He-song, the scattered and repaired spirit stones are all in front of a counter. After handing over 10 spirit stones, someone from the spirit building pavilion will take out a notebook and record the rental location, which means they can stay for another month. As for the rooms that did not come to renew the spirit stones, there will be people from the law enforcement hall coming to retrieve them. Want to live for free? That doesn't even have a door. Following Wei Fan's footsteps, He-song was quickly taken to an antique house. Exquisite wooden furniture is neatly arranged, with wisps of smoke swirling around it. The strong and persistent aroma of aromatherapy made He-song, who had just entered it, immediately feel a slight difference. However, due to the excellent safety of Lingjian Pavilion located within the Zhushan Immortal Archway, He-song did not hold his breath after a moment of hesitation. Caution also depends on the occasion and identity. I have a low status now. Moreover, this place is within the Lingjian Pavilion. In addition, Wei Fanxiu is much taller than himself. If you hold your breath and don't hear anything like this, it may only add laughter and not be beautiful. Wei Fan did not notice anything unusual. After sitting down with He-song in the room, he spoke softly. Dao Yu has just become a spiritual cultivator and has no other achievements. I'm afraid you came this time because you're short of money. To be honest with my fellow Taoist, this situation is actually very common and there are solutions. Just leave a trace of energy behind, and there is no need to come back every month in the future. It can be done once a year. Speaking, Wei Fan reached out and flipped over, and a contract document appeared on the table in front of He-song. Taoist friends, please take a look. Wei Fan's voice was neither urgent nor slow, and his words were fluent. It seems that he has experienced too many such things. It seems that there are probably many members of the Xianfang who are as shy as themselves. After calming down and bowing his hand to Wei Fan, Hisong finally picked up the contract document in front of him. Glancing over, he suddenly understood why Wei Fan appeared so skilled in treating himself. There are regulations in the contract documents that require employees to join Xianfang and become internal members of Xianfang, and then they can use the annual rent issued by Xianfang as collateral. Although Lingjifu did not receive any annual worship. But as long as there are no mistakes, the spiritual rice produced from the 5-acre spiritual field will receive 150 spiritual stones every year after being purchased by Xianfang. After deducting the annual rent of 120 spiritual stones, only 30 spiritual stones remained in Hisong's hands. The content of this contract document is to allow the internal personnel of Xianfang to reside first, and then issue a contract to pay the rent again. After the contract document leaves a breath, even if the cultivator wants to default on the account, they will be caught by the law enforcement team following the breath and forcibly settling the account. At that time, even if you don't die, you will have to peel off your skin. It also eliminates the desire of some people to default on their debts. If you pay on your own, it will be completely different from if someone forcibly takes you back to pay. If you agree, just leave a trace of breath on the contract document. Wei Fan seemed to be certain that Hisong would do so, without urging him. He just spoke like a statement and then raised his hand to start brewing tea. When unknown tea leaves start rolling in the teapot. When the first cup of tea was placed in front of Hisong, Hisong also timely left his own breath on the contract document in his hand. There is no problem with the contract. Just pay first and use later from the original. It has become the current pay after use. And it has changed from the original monthly payment to the current annual payment. The amount of spirit stones that should be paid is still the same, but it is just for the convenience of the internal personnel of the Immortal workshop. Thank you, Taoist friend, good tea. Hisong picked up the tea cup and took a gentle sip before praising it. Although he doesn't know much about tea, he has already placed it in front of him. If he doesn't take a sip and praise good tea, it's really not giving face. As the deacon of the Lingjian Pavilion, Wei Fan's cultivation level, although unknown, is definitely higher than his own. Such a person personally brews tea for himself, and Hisong naturally won't be impolite. Therefore, even if he couldn't taste the quality of the tea at all, Hisong seemed to sincerely praise it. Hahaha, Taoist friends don't need to be like this. My lifelong hobby is to make friends. A pot of bad tea, Taoist friends don't mind. It seemed that he saw what Hisong was thinking in his heart, and Wei Fan smiled and said. Then, he poured another cup of tea for Hisong. But this time, as he placed the tea in front of Hisong, his voice rang out again. Taoist friend, do you recognize Meng Guan from the Lingyao Pavilion? End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Lingji Pavilion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Lingji Pavilion. Meng Guan from the Spirit Medicine Pavilion. Upon hearing this, the figure of the old man from the Spirit Medicine Pavilion flashed through Hisong's mind. Meng Guan was the one who obtained the book Spiritual Plant Planting Techniques from his predecessor. Being able to become a spiritual cultivator is also due to Meng Guan's affection. Even for Meng Guan, this matter is just a small matter within his responsibility, but gratitude is gratitude, which needs to be repaid. Now arriving at Lingjian Pavilion, Wei Fan in front of him opened his mouth and was Meng Guan. Can you say that these two people have a holiday? A series of thoughts flashed through his mind, and Hisong thought for a moment before finally deciding to adapt to changes with immutability. Even if Wei Fan is evil in front of him, how can he possibly control himself in the Spirit Medicine Pavilion while Wei Fan is in the Spirit Building Pavilion? No big deal, this Lingjian Pavilion will come in the future. I recognize that if I could become a spiritual cultivator, it would still be Meng Lao's guidance to build a bridge. Otherwise, I'm afraid I would still be just a casual cultivator at this time. Without any concealment, Hisong spoke back. As he spoke, Hisong's eyes flickered and he was ready to leave at any time. Within the Zhoushan Immortal Temple, even as an internal member of the temple, one cannot use force. Once the law enforcement team is attracted, not everyone can bear the charge of taking action within the Immortal Archway. Even if Wei Fan in front of him is the deacon of Lingjian Pavilion, he may not escape punishment. You don't have to be like this, Taoist friends. It's very safe inside the Immortal sect, and I'm from the same sect as Meng Guan. I just want to ask him how he's doing. Wei Fan smiled and looked at Hisong with a more friendly gaze. One of Meng Guan's duties in the Lingyao Pavilion was to recruit new spiritual cultivators, which he naturally understood. In this way, Hisong, the spiritual cultivator who has just joined the Spirit Medicine Pavilion, must have been recommended by Meng Guan. He just spoke up and asked, just to see what kind of character Hisong is and whether it's worth making friends with. If Hisong Gang had just subconsciously distanced himself from Meng Guan, it was probably not the kind face waiting for Hisong Gang at this moment. But now the result has made him quite satisfied, so naturally he looks at Hisong differently. Seeing this situation, Hisong breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Immediately afterwards, the two of them began to chat word by word. Through previous inquiries, Wei Fan learned about Hisong's character. And Hisong was also happy to accept Wei Fan's kindness. In a situation where both parties intended to make friends, the relationship between the two began to quickly get closer. By the time Hisong was personally sent out of the Lingjian Pavilion by Wei Fan, the two had already started to call each other brothers. Leave Lingjian Pavilion. Hisong's gaze turned towards the direction of the Lingyao Pavilion. Meng Guan, who recommended himself to join the Spirit Medicine Pavilion and become a spiritual planter, should soon be able to treat him differently through Wei Fan, right? In this way. In this Zhoushan Immortal Archway, I have developed a friendship between a mid-stage Qi practitioner and a late-stage Qi practitioner. During the conversation before, Hisong already knew that Wei Fan's cultivation had reached the 7th level of Qi cultivation. Stronger than Meng Guan, who practices 6 levels of Qi. Interacting with Wei Fan and Meng Guan may lead to great success in the future, but at least it is not without foundation. Once there is any news, through the mouths of Wei Fan and Meng Guan, one can also know in advance. Thinking of this, Hisong's footsteps suddenly became lighter and faster. I didn't go home to practice. Following his memory, Hisong quickly arrived at the stall area within the Immortal Square. Last time I came to the stall area, it was my first time going out to buy rice. Initially, Hisong was cautious and bought 20 kilograms of rice before hastily leaving. He didn't even have the intention to stroll around the stall area, afraid of being targeted by others. But now it's different. Dressed in Lingjifu's attire, Hisong's identity in the Bamboo Mountain Immortal Workshop is not comparable to that of ordinary casual cultivators. Naturally, there is no need to worry about being targeted if you buy a little something. This time when he came to the stall area, Hisong actually took a good stroll inside. Lower grade thick earth talisman, 1 piece of 5 spirit stones, there are still 13 pieces left, sold out and stopped. Lingmi, a homemade lingmi, weighs 10 pounds per piece of lingshi. Pai Goudan, 2 spirit stones in 1 bottle. The inferior magical tools are sold at a loss for only 80 spirit stones. The cries of selling echoed in his ears, and Hisong's gaze swept over the stalls in front of him. There are those who sell spiritual talismans, and there are also talisman pens, ink, paper, and other materials for making talismans on the stalls, which look both abundant and miscellaneous. There are sellers of Pigudan, and the stalls are filled with bottles, jars, and jars, but most of them are filled with substandard pills like Pigudan. A serious alchemist would not come to the stall area to set up a stall. There are also those who sell magic tools, but looking at the bumpy appearance on that tool, Hisong can imagine how many times that tool has been destroyed. Hisong also saw the old man who bought Lingmi himself last time. At this moment, the old man's sleeve was constantly filled with spiritual rice, and soon it was filled with a cloth bag. Storage bag. As he watched the spiritual rice gushing out from the old man's sleeve, a term flashed through Hisong's mind. Unexpectedly, an old man selling rice could still carry a storage bag with him. After taking a few more glances, Hisong withdrew his gaze, and at the same time, he had some confidence in Lingzhufu's future in his heart. An old man selling lingmi can have a storage bag. I will definitely have it in the future. Keep moving forward. There are more and more stalls appearing in front of Hisong, and the products sold are also becoming more and more diverse. In Hisong's view, many things are unheard of and unseen. But Hisong didn't care either. Free practice is inherently difficult, and compared to disciples of the sect and family members, the knowledge reserve of free practice is definitely insufficient. It's also very easy to solve. Head up. Hisong saw a huge plaque at a glance. Lingji Pavilion. This is the goal of Hisong's visit to the stall area. When communicating with Wei Fan before, Wei Fan instructed Hisong to come to the Lingji Pavilion to purchase some commonly used spells by cultivators. At the same time, there are also many books on common knowledge of cultivating immortals available for reading in the Lingji Pavilion. These books are charged for free study. But the internal personnel of Zhushan Xianfang are free of charge. Only when purchasing spells will they be charged normally. In this way, for a rookie like Hisong who has just entered the cultivation world and has become an internal member of the Immortal workshop, it is a treasure trove. Glancing at his exclusive attire for Lingzhufu, Hisong stepped forward and entered the Lingji Pavilion. Little woman Pinger, I have seen you before, may I ask you, but what spells do you need? Just as he entered the Lingji Pavilion, a gentle female voice came to Hisong's ear. Looking at the sound, Hisong's eyes lit up. In front of her, a beautiful woman looked at her with a smile on her face, and the voice she had just heard also came from her mouth. Female cultivators usually have good looks, and those who cultivate immortals wash hair and cut marrow are almost all handsome men and beautiful women. Hisong's appearance at this moment can also be described as dignified and quite handsome. I, Hisong, have met a Taoist friend. A senior has instructed me to choose a few basic spells. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Selecting spells. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Selecting spells. Hisong Chao nodded slightly and expressed his needs. After entering the body with qi and reaching the level of qi cultivation, the cultivator is still in the weakest stage. There is too little spiritual power in the body, and there is no magic to protect oneself. At this time, cultivators, even when facing ordinary martial artists, are highly likely to capsize in the sewer. Therefore, usually after reaching the first level of qi cultivation, cultivators will quickly select a few basic spells to use for protection and other purposes. Hisong was unaware before. But under the guidance of Wei Fan, he also understood the importance of basic spells for himself. I have just arrived at the Lingji Pavilion and want to learn a few basic spells. Also, take a look at the books that record the common knowledge of the cultivation world in the Lingji Pavilion. Make your understanding of the cultivation world less scarce. Basic spell. He Dao Yu, please follow me. Upon hearing this, Ping Er's eyes rolled and quickly led Hisong to the other side. In front of an empty desk. A cup of hot tea was poured in front of Hisong. After waiting for a moment, the bottle came to Hisong again, holding a tray. In the tray, more than 10 jade slips were quietly placed on top, showing off their beauty. Putting down the tray in his hand, the bottle immediately picked up a jade slip from the tray and introduced it. This is the Spirit Eye technique, which allows you to check other people's cultivation at any time to avoid offending the strong. This is the Fireball technique, which condenses fireballs to kill enemies with extraordinary power. This is the technique of teleportation, which is the first choice for cultivators during the qi cultivation period to communicate with their friends over long distances. The speed of Feiha's teleportation is extremely fast, and it is basically not intercepted. If intercepted, the information inside will also self-destruct, ensuring extremely high security. This is a lightness technique that can increase walking speed and is essential for long-distance trekking and escaping. This is the gathering breath technique, which can restrain one's own breath and is no different from stubborn stones. It is basically imperceptible to people. This is. With the introduction of the bottle, Hisong's gaze was dim. These things. He wants it all. These spells are indeed essential for every cultivator. But before coming to the Lingji Pavilion, Wei Fan specifically instructed Hisong that there were 3 necessary spells to choose from, and the other basic spells could be purchased when there were plenty of Lingshi in the future. 3 must-have spells. 1 is the spiritual eye technique. 1 is the art of communication. 1 is the technique of gathering breath. Lingmu technique can reveal the cultivation of others at a glance, avoiding provoking strong enemies. However, since Lingmu technique can only detect cultivation and cannot obtain other information, it will not be as annoying as divine consciousness scanning. Spiritual eye technique is different from spiritual consciousness scanning. It is like looking at Qi technique, which can only see the opponent's cultivation level and is not annoying. But consciousness scanning. It's like touching with your hand who wants to be suddenly touched by a stranger. Therefore, in the realm of cultivation, everyone is accustomed to using the spirit eye technique and does not pay attention, but scanning the other person with divine awareness is a taboo. Transliteration: after exchanging breath with friends, simply release paper cranes or birds to contact them, making it the preferred spell for cultivators during their Qi cultivation period to communicate over long distances. Of course, if the opponent is inside a defensive formation or has used the breath-gathering technique to conceal their own breath, the transmission technique will not be able to find them and will only stay at the point where their breath disappears. Exchanging breath with friends is like adding a friend and using this breath to connect with each other. Don't worry about this trace of breath being tracked by someone. If there is a special spell that changes one's own breath, the teleportation spell will become ineffective. At the same time, once the communication technique is intercepted, the information on it will also instantly self-destruct, and the person who uses the communication technique will also know. The technique of restrained breathing is the best way to restrain one's own breath, making others unable to perceive one's own methods, and avoiding disasters and misfortunes. Of course, the restraint technique can only block perception. If you see it with the naked eye, you can still see the existence of this person. The technique of restraining breathing is only to restrain one's own breath, not an invisibility technique. Therefore, when using the technique of restraint and not wanting others to discover oneself, it is best to hide and avoid being seen. However, when using the spirit eye technique to observe a person who has operated the breathing technique, the spirit eye technique is also unable to determine the other person's cultivation level. When the other party does not use the breathing technique, a sweep of the spirit eye technique can reveal their cultivation level. Each of these spells only requires 10 spirit stones. Which ones do Taoist friends need? After introducing all the spells inside the tray, the bottle looked at Hisong and asked softly. The spells sold in the Lingji Pavilion are all carried by jade slips, and there will be no situations where one cannot practice or lacks words or pages. After purchasing it, you can directly attach it to the jade slip and fully accept all the tricks of this spell. Moreover, there are also previous experiences and insights on these spells. It is enough to save many detours for those who are practicing this spell for the first time. With such comprehensive service, the price will naturally not be cheap. However, instead of searching for affordable hand-copied versions in the stalls outside, Hisong is more willing to purchase original and authentic products at Lingji Pavilion. Not for others. Just because I'm afraid of being tricked. It's a small matter that the handwritten version cannot be practiced. If you get distracted while practicing, it will be a lot of fun. However, the price of 10 spirit stones for this spell also made Hisong feel a slight pain. My predecessor only spent 1 spiritual stone on purchasing a thick earth puzzle that could cultivate up to 9 levels of Qi. Buying one's own spell requires 10 spirit stones. I only have over 30 spiritual stones on my body, and I can only learn 3 spells at most. In this way, after learning the basic spells required by the 3 cultivators, only a few spirit stones will remain on oneself. It's just enough for me to eat this year. This I really don't even want dogs to use martial arts. The cost of spells is outrageous, right? The hesitation in Hisong's heart quickly dissipated. I need 3 magic techniques. Spirit Eye technique, breathing technique, and communication technique. Thank you, Taoist. Nodding towards the bottle, Hisong took out 30 spirit stones from his sleeve and handed them to the bottle casually. Take the spirit stone handed by Hisong. The bottle picked out 3 jade slips from the tray and handed them to Hisong. Just stick the jade slip on your forehead. A gentle female voice came again. Hisong didn't say anything more, just took the jade slip and casually took a piece to stick on his forehead. The next moment, all the information about the technique of gathering breath was firmly imprinted in Hisong's memory. Almost in an instant, Hisong had already fully understood how to cultivate the breath refining technique, as well as the various effects after completing the cultivation of the breath refining technique. After completing the remaining 2 jade slips and learning all 3 basic spells, Hisong finally opened his eyes. It has to be said. The effect of using jade slips to learn spells is indeed very good. Hisong, who had just learned 3 basic spells, did not feel tired at all. Instead, he felt energetic and had memories of the 3 basic spells in his mind, as if they had deepened a bit. If you have any other needs, just call me. Books related to cultivating immortality are all placed on the bookshelf over there, and you can browse them freely. I have some other matters to attend to, so please excuse me for now. Leave a sentence, and the figure of the bottle will disappear with it. Cultivate 1 level of qi and wear the clothing of the internal members of the immortal sect. Only purchase 3 basic spells. Such obvious characteristics have already given the bottle some understanding of Hisong. Based on her previous experience in receiving people, Hisong is likely to be flipping through some common sense books in the Lingji Pavilion and won't leave so soon. Perhaps in the next few days, Hisong will come to the Lingji Pavilion every day. But he won't buy any more spells. Of course, there is no need for her to receive on the side. Thank you very much, Pinger Daoyu. The bottle that was heading away arched its hand, and Hisong resisted his desire to immediately go home and practice 3 spells. Walking to the nearby bookshelf, Hisong picked up a book and silently started reading it. Lingji Lu, Ling Quang Lu, Monster Map, Division of Immortal Cultivation Realm, Division of Surrounding Forces of Huda Sect. One book after another was scanned by Hisong's gaze, giving him a general understanding of the cultivation world he was in. Hisong is currently within the influence of the Thick Soil Sect, a Golden Core sect. Hutu sect governs 4 immortal cities. Each immortal city has 3 to 4 immortal neighborhoods under its jurisdiction. And at this moment, Hisong is located in one of the 4 immortal cities, within the Zhushan Immortal Archway under the jurisdiction of Qingyuan Immortal City. There are disciples of the Huda sect stationed inside the Xianfang, ensuring safety and safety. In addition, there are 4 other Golden Dan sects surrounding the Huda sect. The 4 major sects are Golden Sword Sect, Purine Sect, Qianghua Sect, and 7 Star Sect. The Golden Sword Sect, Purine Sect, and Qianghua Sect are all orthodox sects located in the east, west, and south. The 7 Star Sect is located in the north of the Thick Earth Sect, which is the gate of the Demon Sect. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Surprise, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Surprise. In addition to the distribution of power around the Huda sect, Hisong also learned about the sale of spells and cultivation techniques. In the realm of cultivation, the cultivation method is actually not worth money. Advanced cultivators can freely create techniques and distribute them layer by layer, resulting in an extremely large number of techniques with various attributes. The price of general cultivation methods is generally around 100 spirit stones, which is not expensive. However, within the spheres of influence of various major sects and aristocratic families, the martial arts of our sect or family are incredibly cheap. The thick earth Jew, which is better than how to loosen one's own cultivation, was created by the strong members of the thick earth sect and can be practiced to the perfection of the golden elixir. But within the sphere of influence of the thick earth sect, a thick earth technique that can cultivate up to 9 levels of qi only requires a spiritual stone. This situation is not uncommon. Almost all sects, within their own sphere of influence, will do so. Mainly because there are many benefits. Firstly, almost all martial arts released by sects or aristocratic families will have a reserve after practicing until the later stage of qi cultivation. It is necessary to purchase unique resources in this sect in order to quickly improve. Don't buy it. Then you can watch others enter the realm at lightning speed, and your own cultivation speed is still slow as a turtle crawling. In this way, one can continuously earn spiritual stones from the scattered cultivation body. Secondly, after practicing the martial arts of our sect, joining our sect becomes the best choice for those who take the chance to break through the foundation building during their free time. There is no need to transfer cultivation techniques, no need to leave one's hometown, and there is a higher level of cultivation within the sect as a gift. In this way, the temptation of building scattered foundations can be described as great. Third, it is precisely because of these benefits that within the sphere of influence of the Huda sect, Huda Ju is so cheap. All other techniques in the Lingji Pavilion require 100 spirit stones, which is relatively expensive. As for spells, most spells are monopolized by sects and aristocratic families. Spells that can be released and sold to casual cultivators will naturally not be too advanced. The spells during the qi cultivation period are relatively complete because their power is not significant. But when it comes to the foundation period, the chance of obtaining the foundation period spell will be greatly reduced. Only by joining a sect or family can one obtain a relatively complete set of foundation building spells. However, even so, there are restrictions in the transmission jade slips for practicing qi period spells, making it impossible to transfer previously learned spells to others. That's also why the previous bottle left without any instructions. The purchased spells can only be used by oneself. Hisong looked at it and was deeply attracted by the book in front of him. Various common knowledge about the cultivation world has also flooded into Hisong's mind, giving him a deeper understanding of the cultivation world. For several consecutive days, Hisong not only performed the spirit rain technique every day in the spirit field. Then everyone came to the Lingji Pavilion to browse through the books. He naturally became more familiar with the cultivation world he was in. This situation persisted until a few days later. On this day, bright lights lit up next to Hisong. Like a light the size of a soybean, it lightly jumps, illuminating all around Hisong. Putting down the book in his hand, Hisong turned his head to look at it with satisfaction. At this moment, the outside sky has already begun to dim. In the Lingji Pavilion, bright lights illuminate the vast room, almost like during the day. Seeing this situation, Hisong didn't even think about it and walked directly towards the outside of the Lingji Pavilion. After several days of browsing, he had already flipped through all the books on common knowledge about the cultivation world in the Lingji Pavilion. It can be said that at this moment, Hisong has knowledge about the cultivation world in his mind, which is no less than that of family cultivators and even disciples of the sect. Leave the Lingji Pavilion. The stall area outside is now deserted, and most of the vendors have already left. Although there is no curfew at night in Jushan Xianfang, the night is dark and the wind is high. Who knows what kind of culprit is hidden in the darkness? Although law enforcement teams patrol at night, there are always blind spots when patrolling. Not going out at night has almost become the default rule for cultivators. Passing through the stall area. Due to the fact that the stall area is not far from Hisong's residence. Therefore, Hisong hurried slowly and quickly returned to the door of his own house before the sky had completely darkened. However, just as Hisong was about to open the door and return to his room, a hurried footsteps suddenly sounded behind him. Step by step. The sound of hurried footsteps quickly drew closer. Upon hearing this, Hisong's face suddenly changed dramatically. For several consecutive days, I went home at this time and never encountered any danger. At first, he remained vigilant every day, but today he was finally careless. For a moment, Hisong was filled with regret in his heart. I should always be vigilant. The sound of footsteps appeared too suddenly, and upon hearing this direction, it seemed to be coming straight at me. Although Hisong was not in a hurry, he only had time to feel out the two wrinkled thick earth talismans from his sleeve, but before he could stimulate them, his voice had already reached Hisong's side. In an instant, a gentle breeze blew by, and Hisong's nose smelled a pungent and bloody smell. The feeling of being stared at by a fierce beast made Hisong's eyelids skip a beat. The faint spiritual pressure emanating from the person beside him made Hisong's hair rise. This person is invincible. However, just as Hisongxia was about to activate the thick earth talisman and delay waiting for the law enforcement team to rescue him, a voice suddenly came from beside him. Don't panic, it's me, Lin Kong. Lin Song's voice was a bit weak, not as thick as when I saw him a few days ago. But at this moment, Hisong had no trace of emotion. Spiritual power converges in the body, and a powerful spiritual force rushes into the thick earth talisman in the hand. Almost in an instant, a dirt-yellow barrier enveloped Hisong's entire being. This is a defensive barrier that only appears after the activation of the thick earth symbol. This barrier may seem fragile, but in fact, its defense is very strong. Even in the middle of Qi cultivation, it takes some time to break through. It's probably not that easy to break through this barrier in the early stages of Qi cultivation. After completing all of this and ensuring his own safety, Hisong breathed a sigh of relief and turned his gaze to the person in front of him. The person who came here is really Lin Kong. That is to say, living next to Hisong, I had previously greeted the fierce Sanxiu who made a living by hunting monsters. At this moment, although Lin Song's figure was as fierce as before, his expression was somewhat listless. Hisong fixed his gaze and noticed that Lin Song seemed to be seriously injured. There were bloodstains splashing out like raindrops all over Lin Song's chest, and the pungent smell of nosebleeds that Hisong had previously smelled probably originated from this. In addition, Hisong also found that there seemed to be a depression in Lin Song's chest, and there was no blood flowing from the wound, but it should have injured his internal organs. Looking at Lin Song's listless expression at the moment, a stone in Hisong's heart had just fallen to the ground. It's okay, it wasn't for me. End of this chapter.